Sixth lesson: The Girl Who Hated Books. Once there was a girl named Meena. If you looked up her name in a book, you would find that it means fish in ancient Sanskrit. But Meena did not know that because she never looked up anything anywhere. She hated to read, she hated books. They are always in the way, she said. And this was true because in her house, books were everywhere, not just on bookshelves and bedside tables were books usually are, but in all sorts of places where books usually are not. There were books in drawers and desks, in cupboards and chests. There were books on the sofa and books on the shelves, books stuffed in the fireplace and stacked on the chairs. Worse still, her parents were always bringing home more books. They kept buying books and borrowing books and ordering books from catalogs. They read at breakfast and lunch and dinner, but when they asked Meena if she wanted to read, she would stamp her feet and shout, "I hate books." And when they tried to read out loud to her, she would put her hands over her ears and say and shout even louder, "I hate books." Like this. There were probably only one person in the world who hated books more than Meena, and that was her cat Max. A long time ago, when he was just a kitten, an atlas had fallen on his tail. It had bent the tip, and from then on, he tried to stay on the top of the books rather than below them. One morning, after Meena moved all the books out of the sink to brush her teeth, she went to the kitchen to get breakfast for herself and Max. First, she climbed onto a stack of encyclopedias so she could reach the cereal. Then she opened the fridge and moved a pile of machines to get the milk. She poured some for herself and some for Max. "Max," she called, "breakfast is ready." But Max didn't come. She tried again. "Max," she called, "breakfast is ready." He still didn't come. Where could he be? She wondered. She looked in the bathtub and behind the drawer. She looked under the stairs and on top of the clock. She found more books, but she didn't find Max. Suddenly, she heard a loud mew. She ran into the dining room, and there he was stuck on top of the tallest stack of books in her house. It was made up all of the books her parents kept buying her, and she kept refusing to read. At the bottom were big, shiny picture books from when she was a baby. In the middle were alphabet books and nursery rhymes. At the top right by Kelling were fairy tales and adventure stories. They were all covered in dust. "Don't worry, Max," Meena called up to him. I'll rescue you." She started to climb the pile of books. At first, it was easy because the picture books had hard covers and she felt as if she were climbing stairs. But when she reached the paperbacks, her foot slipped on a book of poetry. She lost her balance and started to slide. Crash! The books went flying. They fell every which way. The blindings cracking opened for the very first time and the pages flipping apart. As they fell, strange things began to happen. People and animals started falling out of the pages and tumbling to the ground. They dropped one on top of the other, scattering the books and toppling the chairs. There were princes and princesses, fairies and frogs, then a wolf and a purple giraffe and a troll on a log. There were elephants, emperors, and a bunch of monkeys twisted up in themselves. But most of all, there were rabbits falling this way and that. Wild rabbits and white rabbits and rabbits with hats. Rabbits, princess, monkeys, cat, Max, elephant. This called a mouse, frog, rabbit. Meena sat there in the middle of it all, too surprised to move. I thought books were full of words, not rabbits, she said. A sixth more came rolling out of a book beside her. By now, she couldn't recognize the dining room at all. The elephant was balancing on a coffee table, juggling the good china plates. The monkeys had torn down the curtains and were using them as caps, and the rabbits were nibbling on the table legs. "Stop!" cried Meena. "Go back!" But there was so much going on that no one heard her speak. She grabbed the nearest rabbit and tried to stuff him into a cookbook, but that scared him so much he wriggled out of Meena's hand and ran away. She opened another book and 4 ducks flew out. She slammed it shut again. "This won't work," said Meena. "I don't know who goes in which book." She thought for a minute. "I know," she said. "I'll go to everyone and ask them where they belong." She started with one strange creature but didn't recognize at all. "Who are you?" she asked. "A is for aardvark," the animal said angrily, and marched off in search of her alphabet book. Then she said another time. She picked up the nearest book and began to read aloud. "Once upon a time," Meena began, "in a land far, far away." Slowly the creatures stopped jumping and chattering. They came closer to hear what happened next. Soon they were all sitting in a circle around her, listening to her read. When Meena reached the top of the second place, the cats in the circle jumped up. "That's us," they cried. "That's our page. That's our book." They leapt up out of the circle, jumped into her lap, and disappeared into the book. Meena clapped it shut before they could pop out again. She grabbed another story. One by one, she began reading all her books, and one by one the creatures found out where they belonged. At last there was just one little rabbit in a little blue coat left in the room. Meena slowly picked up a book. It was the tale of Peter Rabbit. "Maybe I could keep this rabbit with me," she thought. She was beginning to feel lonely now that everyone else was gone. But the little rabbit stood in front of her, shifting nervously from foot to foot and twitching his nose. He was anxious to get back home. So with a big sigh, Meena opened the last book. The rabbit hopped in, and with a flash of his white cotton tail, he was gone. The house was quiet. Max sat on some books, washing his face. Meena sighed. I'll never see those rabbits again, she said. Then she noticed that the books were still there, lying around her. She started to smile. When her parents came in that afternoon, they couldn't believe their eyes. Not because the curtains were gone and the dishes were broken and the table legs were chewed up, but because there, sitting in the middle of the room, was Meena. She was reading a book. The curtains were gone and the dishes was broken here. Table legs not there. But Meena is sitting. They saw that Meena reading a book.